Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lloyd Suello. So I'm here to give my stand about a specific question in relation to free trade. So the topic was resolve. Does the global or international free trade has done more harm than good? So as you can know, according to Johnson in 2011, the definition of free trade is a kind of trade in which countries around the world carry out commercial transactions without any limitations or borders. So according to World Trade Organization, this kind of trade can give unprivileged countries like the Philippines the opportunity to focus on the production of goods that obtain from their natural resources and the environment, with the capability to sell the same goods from the local market to the foreign market, while at the same time being able also to purchase back goods from other countries with no incentives or restrictions. And free trade offers several benefits, especially for developing countries. So as the world revolves around its development, many issues has been talked about the possible outcomes of free trading in different countries. So as I answer the question, so in my personal view, hypothetically, as I address the issue, free trade is meant to remove partial barriers to trade and to increase the economy not only in developed countries like US or China, but also it helps for developing nations like the Philippines. So in a free trade agreement, both economies from different kinds of nations can encounter accelerated growth rates technically on their economic market. As such, sellers and buyers from different countries may exchange voluntarily without any limitations and restrictions. So free trades enables the accumulation of products and services by both domestics and international workers and gives them a specific advantage. That's why I give my stand that free trade has done more good deeds by giving possible impacts in our country and other countries and by making a formidable link between different economies and continents in the world. So as I stand and support my claim, according to Zheng in 2010, so free trade was introduced to help facilitate cross-border trade negotiations that were important for facilitating trade, like assistance, services, and environmental issues. And it also helped countries to engage in trade in a specific area that has prevented them from exploiting each other in terms of natural resources. And also for developing countries like the Philippines that is often advanced and depend on their economy through strategic free trade agreements, so it helps them progress their economic market. So developing country, so what does it mean? So it was used as a broad term for a country that are with low levels of economic resources or low living standards and cannot withstand with no such notice, which is according to VTSO in February 2019. So developing countries like Philippines needs the concept of free trade so that their economy market will rise along with developed countries. So with free trade, developing countries can benefit from by increasing their size or access to economic strategic relations, and also can give them a strong connection with more powerful countries that can help them ensure that have extra protection from international threats. And also, developing countries can also use free trade agreements to improve their internal infrastructures as well as to improve their political system. So free trade also can allow developing nations to fill the gaps in their production processes. So individual citizens from any developing countries has the freedom to increase their own quality of life with the concept of free trade, which is according to VTSO in 2019. So in the Philippines alone, So free trade has been a significant impact to it. So according to the paper entitled Great Good Trade Liberations under the ASEAN Economic Community, the effects on the Philippine economy by Dr. Ramon Clarete, free trades help the Philippines to create more goodwill, not just in trade and investment, but also in the mobility of foreign work managers and tourists across countries through even more cultural and educational. So the Philippines received some $237 million, equivalent to 0.05% of GPE alone, due to the big um, implementation of free trade in our economic market. And also, the Philippines reported an increase of almost 4 times in just 10 years because of free trade. In labor remittance, so Philippines is number 1 in ASEAN and 4th in worldwide, perhaps alongside with China, India, and Mexico, which China is the only one developed country that belongs to the list. And also the Philippines has also reported that its international tourist revenues have increased by more than twice for almost 2 decades due to free trade alone. So in relation with other countries, so the Philippines has more strong connection with as Asian countries, especially for China. So why would I say for that? So according to an article by ASEAN Briefing in 2017, China was the second largest trading partner in the Philippines in 2015, with a total trade value of 17,646 billion, or equivalent to 13.6% of the total trade between the Philippines and China. So also, according to the statement given by Duterte, there were a huge trade advantage for the Philippines to China. So, according to his last visit there in China, the free trade agreement has a purpose for it. So over time, while the free trade was implemented, there was a security, investment, and credit line pledges has been given to the Philippines. Only at the time, according to Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez, the total amount would include 15 billion in investments projects and 9 billion US dollars in credit facilities alone, with the free trade agreement with China alone. So one good impact of free trade agreement was the concept of free movement of labor and capital across countries and continents. So free labor and capital movements has been ensured that countries covered by trade treaties can acquire the necessary factors of productions for their enterprises, which will help them to improve their productivity and output in the market. Because some countries in Europe before had suffered labor shortage at the end of 1950s, according to Sekeva and Zuckerman in 2008, while others experienced high levels in employment. So for example, which is Italy, has been experienced economic problems such as high employment, while Germany, especially on the city of Munich and Berlin, had a lack of different types of work and a shortage of experts. So to address that, free trade agreement has been strongly implemented to address the problem through the concept of free labor movement. So with that, the Philippines has been one of the contributors with the concept of free movement of labor. As for our fellow OFW, so free trade helps them solve the problem of unemployment in our country by allowing the free movement of people from our countries to more developed countries where they can work. This, in turn, it helps us reduce unemployment and achieve their economic objectives through increased income from abroad. So as a result, so people's income are increasing, so resulting in improved living of standards for people in developing countries like the Philippines. So according to Nicoletta and Camilla Daniela in 2011, so free movement of labor, which is a concept done by free trade agreement, created employment for the last decades, and also increased the economic status of people in such developing countries, in which was a great achievements of developing countries' economic objectives in reducing unemployment. Nevertheless, there is no doubt that free trade has benefited our economy and other different countries, as it has launched up many new markets in the world. So free trade had provided customers around the globe the opportunity to obtain higher qualities, products and services at lower prices, and also to sell their own local products to become recognizable from other countries. It can be concluded from the discussion that free trade has been a reality for developing countries like the Philippines, since it has a significant contribution for the development of their economic market. And also, with the aid of such developed countries like US and China, developing countries like the Philippines can achieve such an increase in their net economic growth for the next few years. So therefore, I strongly stand and believe that free trade has given us positive impacts and more good deeds on different countries in their economic market, as it has aroused them, their economic development goals, and also free trade has therefore been an accurate aspect for the development of modern market. In the end, it is up to individual nations to decide whether or not to free trade is their best interest. However, I strongly believe that with so many compelling benefits and positive impacts of this practice, it is easy to say why many nations have free trade agreements and more still to come in the near future. Thank you.